One idea that has been tossed around a bit in jest, sending the president to a stop on Miss Swift's Eras Tour.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the deepest, most shocking conspiracy theories of the last quarter century.
The U.S. Special Forces invited KXAN News to Camp Bullis to get an inside look at the unconventional warfare training, also known as Jade Helm.
2000, Y2K Doomsday.
Back on the Y2K front, despite all of the assurances that the Y2K computer problems are under control, at a cost of $100 billion in this country, a lot of Americans nonetheless are taking no chances. They're prepared to survive no matter what happens.
The year 2000 problem, or Y2K as it's popularly known, is largely remembered for its near-total lack of consequences. While there could have been systematic mechanical failures, this was avoided thanks to the tireless preparation of engineers and tech experts. The dire predictions of some media commentators and certain niche religious leaders didn't come to pass, and both groups were accused of fear-mongering and stoking panic among the general public.
Hello, friends. We are going to be discussing one of the most serious topics that we have ever attempted to bring to you. And because of the seriousness of it, it is going to affect all of our lives.
In particular, evangelists were admonished for promoting Y2K doomsday theories as a way to profit. For example, they preached that the government would be dismantled to make way for Jesus Christ's return. Suffice it to say, that didn't end up sticking.
Rexella, that is so dynamic, so powerful, so potent. I want you to read it one more time.
In the expanse of human history, nothing this big has been this predictable with this much precision. This much precision. They know exactly what's going to happen, Jack.
Well, it's not hard to figure it out, Rexella.
2001, an inside job. The attack on the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001 was a tragedy that shook the world, leading to a death toll of nearly 3,000 and escalating conflict in the Middle East. But there are those out there who don't believe the story that Al-Qaeda were responsible, despite Osama bin Laden taking credit for the attack, and instead think that 9/11 was an inside job. They think it was perpetrated by George W. Bush and the U.S. government in order to justify going to war in the Middle East, and frequently cite alleged evidence like the explosions at the base of the tower and Bush's calm demeanor when informed about the attack. 2002, Chemtrails.
Well, the white line behind a jet is a natural process that goes on with the relationship between the aerodynamics of the aircraft and the atmosphere.
They won't even say that word. Scientifically, they're called condensation trails. Contrails for short.
Here's the thing. The notion that the condensation trails left behind by planes are a government plot to spread mass quantities of biological agents, it's been widely disproved, and it's roundly dismissed by scientists. But that hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from suspecting that there are nefarious powers at work.
I honestly, it might seem a little bit crazy that I literally have almost 400 videos.
1, 2, 3. X means death.
Chemtrail conspiracy theories have bubbled since the late 1990s, and a 2000 multi-agency collaborative project to prove their non-existence only fueled more distrust. This was with NASA, NOAA, the FAA, and EPA involved, by the way. An undated U.S. Air Force memo, but retrieved by Wikipedia in 2002, suggested that the conspiracy was based on misinterpretations of a 1996 military directive that described, quote, fictional representations of future situations/scenarios.
So what you're really doing is you're sort of artificially generating a cloud.
It's like a long white cloud. That's essentially what it is.
That's right.
As jet fuel burns, it produces mostly water vapor. Picture my mouth like a jet engine. I know that sounds weird, but as I exhale, my breath contains a lot of water, so we'll see something like a cloud.
2003, Iraq War WMDs.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
One of the most reviled, overwhelmingly unpopular war efforts of all time, the so-called War on Terror has been lambasted as a blatant attempt to enrich the American empire. The administration of President George W. Bush saw an opportunity in post-9/11 anxieties and seized on its history-making fashion.
Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly, yet our purpose is sure. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder.
The American and British governments both accused Saddam Hussein, then president of Iraq, of covertly aiding al-Qaeda and developing weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. invaded Iraq in March of 2003, but as early as 2004, the CIA reported that Hussein, quote, did not possess stockpiles of illicit weapons at the time of the U.S. invasion in March 2003 and had not begun any program to produce them.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't, but he had the capacity to make weapons of mass destruction. But I also talked about the human suffering in Iraq, and I also talked the need to advance a freedom agenda. 2004, the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami.
Things happen, and they can happen any second. It can be the most beautiful moment, and then the next second.
Whether you attribute the cause of this natural disaster to a sinister conspiracy or just nature, the tragic facts of this incident are undeniable. Almost 228,000 lost their lives in 12 countries, with Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, and Thailand hit the hardest. The actual cause of this devastating double threat was a rupture along the faults between the Burma and Indian tectonic plates.
I felt that the waves took my daughter away. I was so mad at the sea. I cannot bring myself near it, and not even have my feet in the sand. I wouldn't come around here if necessary. Never. The sea took my daughter from me.
However, according to conspiracy theorists, President Bush was responsible. According to New York Magazine, proponents of the belief cite Defense Secretary William S. Cohen's 1997 warning about the threat of an ecotype of terrorism. In this case, they suggest that Bush dropped tsunami bombs in the ocean to destroy East Asian prosperity.
Children trying to scream for help. I couldn't go and swim to them or try to help them because I couldn't move my legs.
2005. HAARP caused Hurricane Katrina.
But there are some users that allege that you know what else is causing extreme weather events. HAARP and geoengineering, which go hand in hand, weather modifications. There's one tweet, right there from the WHO. There's also these TikToks. This user in French claiming that the actual temperatures right now aren't real.
Much like our last entry, Hurricane Katrina was an indisputable humanitarian crisis, killing nearly 1,400 people and costing over $125 billion in damages. While, of course, we know that weather control isn't a real thing, certain conspiracy theorists will tell you that the culprit was actually the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP. The program, coordinated by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, aims to study the Earth's ionosphere.
Here we have an up-close image on Google Earth of this research program composed of up to 190 antennas. We can see it up close here on Google Earth. And these antennas and radio transmitters right here can only affect a small amount of air above it. They definitely can't control weather conditions or natural disasters.
However, conspiracies abound that HAARP was to blame. And this is despite the fact that popular science has called HAARP's energy waves almost too weak to measure. Another thin defense of the theory is the fact that HAARP's funding was also increased in 2005.
This Twitter user saying weather modification is real, HAARP is real, Hurricane Katrina, Gustav Isaac, and now Harvey all happened around the exact same date. So this user contributing all hurricanes to HAARP.
2006, Lou Dobbs and the North American Union.
To think that it is acceptable for the President of the United States and this executive department of his government, his administration, our government, to proceed without the approval of Congress or a dialogue and a debate and a public voice from the people of this country is absolutely unconscionable.
Hey folks, any chance you're able to spare an Amero? That would be the hypothetical shared currency of Canada, Mexico, and the United States should a European Union-style collaboration never come to fruition.
Critics say foreign policy elites are promoting a European-style union, erasing borders between the three countries and eventually moving to a single North American currency called the Amero. A Commerce Department spokesman, however, denies this, quote, "There is absolutely no plan for a common currency."
While it's a fun thought experiment, the idea has been derided by economic experts as extremely unlikely. Nevertheless, conservative CNN pundit Lou Dobbs suggested on his self-titled news show that not only was such a merger in talks, it was already happening, and without the consent of anyone in any of the three countries involved. While this picked up some mainstream steam, being parroted by Republican presidential candidate Ron Paul, among others, Dobbs's fears didn't materialize.
What they're doing is creating a brave new world, an Orwellian world, in which the will of the people is absolutely irrelevant. And I think we've had a sampling of what's going to happen to people who do that in the future.
2007, the disappearance of Madeleine McCann.
Why would somebody keep her there for so long after she disappeared? Because of my background and the work that I've done with the technology, but also my work in the police, just said to me, it doesn't add up. We all hope and pray that she's alive, of course. But for me, it was highly unlikely.
The case that the Daily Telegraph deemed the most heavily reported missing person case in modern history continues to baffle and frustrate both relevant authorities and the general public. British 3-year-old McCann, on vacation in Portugal with her family, went missing after being left alone with her infant siblings in their hotel room just 180 feet away from where her parents were dining.
Because we're talking about a girl, we're talking about the child that's missing. This is not a circus, this is not a show, this is awful. This family needs closure. There's a criminal out there that knows what happened.
As with other high-profile missing children cases, the McCanns were immediately suspected of having taken their daughter's life, and British tabloids exploited this angle. They posited the deplorable means by which the McCann parents had allegedly done it. The media coverage slowed to a halt when the McCanns won several libel lawsuits against the publications responsible.
I think we need to make it clear to people we took on this case because of the pain and distress that Mr. Ampnell has brought to us and our children. And every time he postpones the case like this, it brings us more pain and distress. Every time we come here, we have to make arrangements for our children to be looked after. We have to book flights. We have to book hotels.
2008, Barack Obama and the birther movement. In 2008, history was made when Barack Obama became the first black president of the United States. However, a worryingly high number of Americans refused to believe that Obama was one of their own, and claimed the new president was born in a different country, meaning his presidency was against the Constitution. In an attempt to stamp out these ideas, Obama released his long-form birth certificate. But this hasn't stopped many theorists from calling the document a forgery and continuing to suggest that Obama is a foreigner. 2009, the swine flu pandemic.
We begin with swine flu, now widespread in 46 states. President Obama has taken steps to ratchet up the response. Officials hope the move will give the government the authority and flexibility to react to a virus that continues to confound the medical community.
Some of our younger audience members may not remember the swine flu or H1N1 scare, or even have been alive for it. For the uninitiated, think of it as a mini proto-COVID. It never got to the point of shutting down the world economy, but it was definitely scary.
Secretary Napolitano will be offering regular updates to the American people as well, so that they know what steps are being taken and what steps they may need to take. But one thing is clear, our capacity to deal with a public health challenge of this sort rests heavily on the work of our scientific and medical community.
A 2016 report published by the Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York City revealed that the virus most likely originated from pigs in central Mexico before being passed to humans. A familiar-sounding narrative in the post-COVID world, fearful conspiracists accuse the World Health Organization of colluding with Big Pharma. That is, engineering a manufactured conspiracy to boost the pharmaceutical industry's profits.
It's entirely reasonable to ask for absolute transparency. What the experts did was entirely ethical. They declared their own interests, but for some reason the World Health Organization is still refusing us full transparency and publishing those interests.
2010, Deepwater Horizon.
Still got about 11 or 15 people missing.
There are many checks before you get to activating the blowout preventer. That is the ultimate fail-safe mechanism, and for whatever reason, and we don't understand that yet, it failed to operate.
Perhaps more commonly known as the BP oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon platform explosion has been deemed one of the worst environmental disasters in history. The appropriately named Oil Spill Commission determined that BP had taken several unnecessary risky steps in building the rig that ultimately led to its literally explosive failure. Controversial radio host and viral internet sensation Alex Jones alleged that the disaster had been manufactured.
Now we are operating 6 remote-operated vehicles simultaneously around the blowout preventer, both monitoring the blowout preventer and trying to close in the flow of oil. Development Driller 3 is now on location, and we expect to start drilling the relief well within 48 hours.
Jones described his belief that Halliburton, the second largest oil services company, had, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, quote, acquired a company that suppresses oil well fires and blowouts just a little more than a week before, end quote. Jones also claimed that there had been a mass dumping of BP stock shortly beforehand, suggesting some individuals' foreknowledge.
I think BP is going to go through a very rough period, especially in the next 6 to 9 months. The first step here is to stabilize the company financially, which they have done so with the agreement with the White House a couple of days ago. They're already going to establish this escrow account, which they will fund it with $5 billion every year, this year and the next 3 years.
2011, Osama bin Laden's fate.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
The May 2nd killing of al-Qaeda founder bin Laden raised more questions than one would expect, especially given the fact that this supposedly ended a major chapter in the war on terror. Bin Laden was buried at sea, and no photos of his body were ever released to the public, and the secrecy surrounding the operation rather predictably gave way to some interesting ideas.
Today, at my direction, the United States launched a targeted operation against that compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. A small team of Americans carried out the operation with extraordinary courage and capability. No Americans were harmed. They took care to avoid civilian casualties.
These included the notion that bin Laden hadn't been killed at all, and that President Barack Obama's administration needed a win. A somewhat more outlandish theory was posited by Alex Jones, that bin Laden had been killed almost a decade earlier, and that the U.S. government had cryogenically frozen his body.
So Americans understand the costs of war. Yet, as a country, we will never tolerate our security being threatened, nor stand idly by when our people have been killed. We will be relentless in defense of our citizens and our friends and allies. We will be true to the values that make us who we are.
2012, Nibiru and the 2012 phenomenon. Back in the early days of the internet, there existed a website called ZetaTalk, which was run by Nancy Leader, who claimed that she had contact with extraterrestrials.
The Earth is indeed a battleground between good and evil. The self-focused want instant gratification.
She asserted that a planet called Nibiru would pass close to Earth and instigate a cataclysmic pole shift, ending all life as we know it. While this theory dates back to 1995, it was continuously revived throughout the 2010s. The first instance was the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012, with many believing that Nibiru would destroy Earth on December 21st.
It's the apocalypse, end of days, the judgment day, the end of the world, my friend.
And in 2017, an end times conspiracist named David Meade revived the conspiracy to great media attention. Of course, nothing happened, and NASA was once again forced to confirm that Nibiru does not actually exist. (2013) The Vatican leaks. Look, it's not every day that the incumbent Pope decides to resign.
The Pope's loneliness in front of what is happening in the Vatican Curia. A Pope that was alone and was left alone. a pope who is a great theologian but who hasn't succeeded in bringing forth his reforms in the battle for transparency.
When Pope Benedict XVI made the decision to retire from his position, which he'd taken up in April 2005, he became the first pope to resign since Gregory XII in 1415. So yeah, kind of a big deal. But before Pope Francis could take Benedict's place in the Holy See, this unprecedented historical moment became ripe breeding ground for all kinds of conspiracy theories.
Si sono moltiplicate tuttavia illazioni, amplificate da alcuni mezzi di comunicazione del tutto gratuite e che sono andate ben oltre i fatti, offrendo un'immagine della Santa Sede che non risponde alla realtà.
The Italian newspaper La Repubblica reported, in an unsourced and unverified story, that, quote, the cardinals were said to have uncovered an underground gay network whose members organize sexual meetings in several venues in Rome and Vatican City, leaving them prone to blackmail.
Desidero per questo rinnovare la mia fiducia e il mio incoraggiamento ai miei più stretti collaboratori e a tutti coloro che quotidianamente, con fedeltà, spirito di sacrificio e nel silenzio, mi aiutano nell'adempimento del mio ministero.
2014. What happened to Malaysia Airlines Flight 370?
ACAS was either switched off or it failed. We don't know which, because whatever did happen, this is the crucial moment. We pretty much know that all the comms are disabled, switched off, broken, blown up.
Over a decade later, and it seems that no one is any closer to explaining what many have called the greatest aviation mystery of all time. Rivaling that of Amelia Earhart, an international passenger flight departed from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia to Beijing, China, but never made it to its ultimate destination.
At this point, I've got two different paths. One is that aircraft was taken over and that the systems were intentionally shut down. The other side would be that there was a singular failure at a common location, and that singular mechanical failure would have done exactly the same thing. At this point in the investigation, there's no evidence one way or the other.
How does one manage to lose a plane? That was the question on everyone's minds, and the sheer lack of answers has fueled the rise of, well, let's call them alternate theories. These included the idea that the flight had been swallowed by a black hole, struck by a meteor, or even somehow abducted by aliens.
When we look at that route, as pilots, we all look at the charts and we look for the waypoints in the airwaves. There aren't any. It's as remote as you can get and still be on this planet.
2015, Jade Helm 15.
And KXAN crews got a closer look at the military exercise that's generated so much buzz, so much controversy. This year, it's called Jade Helm 15. And earlier this year, city leaders in Bastrop and the Army held a town hall meeting after people had concerns about the troops practicing in their backyard. Well, the training is also happening over in San Antonio.
How is the U.S. military supposed to curb the wild conspiracy theories that emerge every time another clandestine operation is uncovered? No, seriously, we want to know. Jade Helm 15 refers to a series of realistic military training exercises sponsored by the United States Special Operations Command. Roughly 1,200 military personnel participated, mostly Green Berets. But a publicly available map declaring the exercise's locations set off alarms in conspiracy circles. Various claims that were floated included that the program's scheduled conclusion on September 15th would coincide with the imposition of martial law by the government, or, harder to believe yet, a catastrophic asteroid strike.
Would the Commissioner's Court consider reversing their invitation to these guys? And would the court be offended if I told the colonel that I didn't believe a single word that he just said?
2016, Pizzagate.
This case shows how fake news can lead to a dangerous situation.
Back in 2016, the emails of Hillary Clinton's campaign chair were hacked and published by WikiLeaks. Within these emails were alleged clues related to a secret human trafficking ring. Now called Pizzagate, the theory posits that powerful Democrats are running and engaging in a secret underground trafficking scheme. The term Pizzagate comes from Comet Ping Pong, a Washington pizzeria that was said to be related to the scheme.
According to the folks with the spider eggs hatching in their brains, Clinton and Podesta have a series of smuggling tunnels that connect to the basement of this pizzeria.
Spread by conservative pundits and alt-right trolls, the totally false conspiracy gained steam and had real-world implications. In 2019, a small fire was started in the restaurant. 3 years earlier, a man shot a lock inside the restaurant to investigate a storage room. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison.
How scary was the situation? He allegedly pointed the gun in the direction of an employee and fired the weapon inside the restaurant.
2017, Melania Trump was replaced.
Unless Melania had shrunk by about 6 inches and grown jowls overnight, "This ain't her," goes one tweet.
There have been a lot of replacement theories as of late. In 2011, a Brazilian blog called Avril Está Morta theorized that pop star Avril Lavigne was replaced by a body double back in 2003. Aside from subliminal messaging in her music, the biggest piece of quote-unquote evidence in regards to this theory is her altered physical appearance. This same conspiracy was later applied to First Lady Melania Trump, whom some believe was replaced for public appearances.
Some saw Melania last Friday with the president on the South Lawn and thought some of her facial features didn't look like her.
Whether she was dead or in hiding, the real Melania was nowhere to be seen. Trump himself addressed these rumors, calling them, as he has so many things, fake news. And this time at least, that was actually the case, with Business Insider calling it, quote, a ridiculous conspiracy theory.
There's an element of truth to the idea that she doesn't want to spend time with him. Well,
2018, the Flat Earth movement.
And the Earth is...
Flat.
The Earth is flat.
My reality, my senses tell me that the Earth is flat and stationary.
We've known that the Earth is round for millennia, with ancient Greek thinkers like Pythagoras and Plato writing about a spherical Earth. And the idea quickly became commonplace. Point is, we've known that the Earth is round for well over 2,000 years, yet people still hold to the archaic belief that it's flat. The internet was a huge boon for the Flat Earth movement, which earned widespread prominence throughout the 2010s.
You know Flat Earthers, I guarantee it, but you don't know who they are because they're afraid of talking about it.
1, 2, 3, we're crazy!
Celebrities like basketball player Kyrie Irving have espoused Flat Earth beliefs. And the first Flat Earth Conference was held in North Carolina in 2017. Furthermore, a YouGov poll conducted in 2018 showed that just 2/3 of millennials believe that the Earth is round. Let's hope that the rest were just trolling.
It's probably the most nonsensical suggestion that a thinking human being could possibly make. It is drivel.
2019. Jeffrey Epstein didn't end his own life.
Epstein was dead, but EMTs inexplicably moved his body before investigators arrived.
On July 6, 2019, financier Jeffrey Epstein was arrested on charges of sex trafficking. He was dead just 1 month later. The official story is that Epstein was unwilling to face punishment and took his own life. But many people aren't buying it, claiming that too many things don't add up, including discrepancies in the story and a lack of proper prison procedure.
2 guards sat just 15 feet from his cell, failing to check on him. Prosecutors say the guards slept and shopped online.
The conspiracy theorists posit that Epstein held powerful secrets about powerful people who subsequently ordered a hit to ensure his silence. Numerous reports prove the widespread belief in this theory, with the 2020 Rasmussen report showing that just 21% of Americans believe the official narrative. 2020. 5G causes harmful health effects.
Why are people afraid of 5G? One word: radiation.
The idea that wireless signals will destroy our health has been around for a long time, pretty much since wireless signals became commonplace. The 5G is killing us all conspiracy achieved mainstream recognition when it was blamed for starting COVID.
Fueling fires on cell towers in recent weeks across Europe, the United States, and now Canada.
But the health scare actually predates the pandemic. In 2019, the New York Times published an article blaming the Russian network RT America for spreading misinformation about 5G. According to RT, the cellular network caused the likes of Alzheimer's, autism, and cancer. Of course, none of this is true, but the conspiracy spread far and wide, with cities like Brussels, Geneva, and Mill Valley preventing the implementation of 5G networks.
There's further no evidence that people living near 5G or other similar towers have increased risk of cancer or other health concerns.
2021. QAnon and January 6th.
Is there a conspiracy theory that you don't believe in?
That's a great question.
While QAnon had already existed for a few years before 2021, President Trump's 2020 election loss and refusal to concede to President Biden ushered in a new era of Q. Part cult, part alt-right movement, QAnon posits that a group of powerful Satanists run a human trafficking ring and battled the Trump administration, who aimed to secretly arrest and execute its members.
The most far out of these beliefs say that celebrities and political elites actually farm children in underground caves so that they can drink blood, which supposedly staves off aging.
Trump is widely depicted as the savior in this narrative. While the conspiracy originated on 4chan, it was mainly spread by its even worse and more underground counterpart, 8chan. However, it found mainstream recognition once Russian and Chinese media got hold of the story. Donald Trump retweeting QAnon accounts certainly didn't help either.
Update from the trenches. Keep red pilling. Keep going, because it worked. It's working. It's beautiful.
2022. Mpox and lockdowns.
Frustratingly, despite the fact we're still in the middle of the COVID pandemic, we seem to be replicating some of its key mistakes, from persecuting strangers to spreading misinformation to badly mismanaging the public health response.
Just when it seemed as though the COVID-19 pandemic was under control and things could return to normal, the 2022 Mpox outbreak showed up to scare the wits out of everybody. Just under a year after it had been initially declared a public health emergency of international concern, the World Health Organization cut it short, sharing that it had sufficiently curtailed new and existing cases.
We have an outbreak that has spread around the world rapidly through new modes of transmission, about which we understand too little and which meets the criteria in the international health regulations.
However, the interim provided plenty of time for conspiracy theorists to claim that COVID was a dry run for Mpox, and that world governments had intentionally leaked the virus as a bioweapon or as a way to justify more lockdowns.
Monkeypox is a pox virus. It's part of the same family that causes smallpox, though thankfully it's not nearly as transmissible or as fatal. It usually presents in humans with fever, swollen lymph nodes, exhaustion, headache, and a rash, though it can also cause complications like blindness if the lesions reach your eyes, and in rare cases can result in death.
2023, 15-minute cities.
Our sense of time is warped because we have to waste so much of it just adapting to the absurd organization and long distances of most of today's cities.
On the face of it, a 15-minute city may not sound all that bad. In fact, it may sound downright innocuous. The concept is pretty straightforward and mostly self-explanatory, as an urban planning concept that would limit all of a city dweller's basic needs to a short walk, bike ride, or public transit journey away.
Why is it not the city that responds to our needs? Why have we left cities to develop on the wrong path for so long?
The idea has become widely controversial in the United Kingdom, with even elected officials in its minority government harshly criticizing it as a way to restrict personal freedoms. Former Transport Secretary Mark Harper expressed concern that the government could, quote, decide how often you go to the shops and that they ration who uses the roads and when.
The Prime Minister has already tasked me to conduct a review into low-traffic neighbourhoods, and that's ongoing, building on my decision to ensure no government money funds them. It can't be right that these schemes are imposed without proper local consent. So we will change the guidance to ensure that councils properly listen to what local people say.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into settings and switch on your notifications. 2024. Taylor Swift is colluding with the United States government.
The Taylor Swift Super Bowl isn't making everyone happy because right-wing dinguses like Vivek Ramaswamy are claiming this whole thing is a conspiracy, suggesting that the Super Bowl will be rigged for the Chiefs to set the stage for Taylor Swift's Biden endorsement. What? That's whack, Jack. Come on.
For those of you who may live under a rock, pop megastar Swift makes up one half of the power couple with Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. But, as certain conservative media personalities will tell you, things aren't quite so wholesome.
That's never going to happen. Tay-Tay wouldn't even get me good tickets for the Eras tour. Waited in that Ticketmaster queue for hours. No pre-sale code. Got stuck in the nosebleeds with Carly Kloss. Come on. Carly Kloss. It was me. It wasn't Biden. It was me.
No. According to Fox News host Jesse Waters and failed presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy, Swift and Kelsey were hired by President Biden's re-election campaign as a mass psyop to sway public opinion. Said right-wing political activist Laura Loomer, quote, "It's not a coincidence that current and former Biden admin officials are propping up Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. They are going to use Taylor Swift as the poster child for their pro-abortion GoTV campaign."
Could you imagine if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? Ben Bankus, comedian and host of the Bankus Show podcast, joins me now. Ben, who do you have? You got the Chiefs?
Well, I've just been thinking that if Biden wants to use Taylor Swift to get reelected, I guess he's given up on the black vote.
Which conspiracy theory shocked you the most? Are there any we missed? Be sure to let us know in the comments below.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.